Hi, everybody, and it's been an amazing day, I think, and right now we're about to hear still one of the last but not least. It's one of the great keynotes. With a great pleasure, I would like to introduce Monty Sharma, who is the Vice President of Product Management for the company app. So, Monty Sharma.
Thank you, Anatoly. Let me get to the first slide here. The VBox was started in 2005, and our whole sort of focused desire was to bring voice into the context of applications. So we were seeing, voice over IP happening and other things like that, but we wanted to make them part of the actual applications that were being used. So if you, you can see some of where we started was in games and virtual worlds to make the voice part of those games and help people sort of socialize and strategize and play together. There's a great quote on the bottom of players come for the game, but they stay for the people. And that's one of the things that we found consistently was as you added voice to the games, it increased the sort of social value to that game, and people were staying and being active much longer. Next slide, please. One of the first games that we worked with was a game called EVE Online. So this was a space-based combat game, and you would see fleets of hundreds of ships flying around, and they were trying to coordinate through text chat. They were trying to set up their own voice over IP networks to talk to each other to coordinate. When we made voice part of EVE, if you were flying a fleet as a fleet commander, you could actually speak to the entire fleet, and when the fleet commander spoke, the voice of everyone else was silenced. You could speak to your wing commanders, they could speak to their own squads, and each squad had its own channel, and this just happened. Prior to voice inside EVE, they would take an hour, hour and a half to set up their fleet communications before they actually could start to fight. So it was a huge impact. Next slide. We went from EVE to Second Life, which most of you have heard about or seen. The interesting thing with Second Life is the metaphor was entirely different. What they wanted to do was to create a social environment where people could just walk up and interact like they do in real life. So we created 3D sounds so you could hear somebody to your right or to your left. If there were clusters of people, the voice of people further away from you would become quieter. All of that so it worked like a real world. Next slide. Where we see all of this headed is this whole integration between new social applications and connected devices. And that's what I want to focus on. What we see in social applications, and one of the key elements is every application is social these days. So we see that we have rich interfaces. So it's telling me what you're doing, where you are. When I can see their last, so many posts in Facebook going on in their life. It gives context for a conversation, and it sort of ends the isolation that people have just being inside one application talking on the phone. It's a very different environment. We are living these connected, whether it's from LinkedIn to Facebook to Yelp, coming together. At the same time, we're seeing is the rise of all of these devices. You think about the iPhone. The great part of the iPhone is actually you're online all the time. You've got powerful applications on it, and occasionally the phone works. But for the most part, that isn't my main use of my iPhone. The iPad takes it one step further where there is no phone in the iPad, but will you be able to use voice over IP? Absolutely. Will your applications integrate it in? Yes. So it's a whole movement away from the the fundamental telco element of the iPhone. We see set-top boxes, PS3s, TV sets all offering Facebook, Twitter integration, and other things like that. So, when I look at this, around me, where I'm sitting right now, I've got my MacBook, which I'm speaking to you from. I have an iPhone, which I use when I'm mobile. I've got an iPad I use when I'm on my couch or traveling. I've got an iMac, which I use for editing and things like that. And I've got a Alienware laptop, which I use to play games. Different devices for different situations, all of them with different interfaces. One of the things that we did as we sort of went down this metaphor is we brought voice to Google Wave. We were using Wave to communicate and collaborate, and the whole point was, okay, we create a Wave, we put notes in. If we wanted to talk about a new product idea, we would actually have to send out conference call details and say, hey, dial this number, this passcode, and we can talk about the Wave we're on. But with the Wave gadget, any wave you're on, you drop the voice gadget in and you can actually start talking to the people who are on that wave. Next slide. Did a similar thing inside of Facebook, and the point inside Facebook was we were socializing with our friends on Facebook. They had our social graph. They knew who was my current friend. And to be able to grab them and to sit down and talk was, the next element of that. So voice as part of Facebook was a way to, hold court with old friends from high school or people I used to work with in another job. We just post up that, hey, we're going to be in this channel. Click right here, and inside Facebook, you get a window, you can talk to people, and you're in that environment. Next slide. So what we see and sort of, the focus for 2025 is if you look at all of the applications that are out there, think of something like Yelp. I use that to find the restaurants I'm going to go to with friends. Well, the first step is that should be shared browsing. I should be able to be talking to a friend. We're both looking at, reviews together. We can point each other to a review and see it in a reasonable way, and we should be able to discuss that while we are in Yelp. We shouldn't have to, go out of band and set up a phone call or anything else. Things like Yelp, which can show other friends of ours who actually might have reviewed a restaurant that we're going to, being able to see their online presence and being able to ping them and talk to them, whether it's voice or text. Bringing that part into the social environment becomes very interesting. And you can see that cascading down to meetups, to LinkedIn group, or anything else. I mean, we're seeing this sort of spread everywhere. And the whole, exciting part with the iPad and the connected devices is we're actually being approached by more and more hardware manufacturers and consumer electronics manufacturers who see communication in these social applications as being the future of their devices. Now, after many years in the business and being a realist, this whole vision, 2025, makes sense to me. It's, it's going to be a cycle of hardware and software. Those of us who are sort of technical leaders will be heavy in this for 2 years. You give it 5-10 years and it'll be a common thing, but the true sense of the woven pervasive infrastructure is going to take us a little while. Let's look at some of the impacts in the next slide. Next slide, please. Switching over, one of the things that we see is for telcos, and I used to be a CTO and an incumbent carrier, and I got into various amounts of trouble by talking about how bandwidth will essentially be free and limitless, and the value of a phone call is really the cost of carrying that data. So, we need to look at a data-centric future. This was back in 96, 97. And it's getting to be true now. Voice has dropped precipitously in terms of price, and what we're looking at is a data-centric future.